Imagine growing up as a Chinese boy and learning that you were not an only child, that actually you had an older sister that was abandoned because she was a girl. Imagine finding out that you would have had a younger brother, too, but he would be one child too many for your family, and he was killed 3 minutes after being born. Imagine learning that if your family had more money, they would have been able to pay the fine that would excuse them from having more than one child. Imagine being the one survivor out of 3. Imagine how that would feel. September 25th, 1980. The One Child Act passes in China. Each family may now only bear one child or else face charges. For the past decades, the country had become a tree with too many branches that each forked into many new limbs. The tree needed pruning, and fast. They needed to do something to stop such a rapid growth in the population, and this was the result. The law was rushed and unorganized from the beginning, so what happened? The population rate did not decline. It did not slow down. There were not fewer births. Instead, something horrific started to happen. The law did not work, and it made the issue worse in China. Second children were still born, but not cared for. And all the time, there were other working alternatives to this plan. Excess children were abandoned, left at orphanages, stuck in dumpsters, or killed. Of these children, 90% die in the first weeks of their lives. Children, these are. Real, live kids. If a child is undesirable when he or she is born, most likely if she was a girl, she is abandoned or killed. Girls are more at risk because Chinese culture considers them less useful in work, finance, and marriages. In fact, so many girls were neglected in the past 20 years that an unhealthy gender imbalance was spread in China. If this continues, it could create social instability for the country. Even when the parents do want the kids they give birth to, they are sometimes not even allowed to keep them. Women as far along in their pregnancy as 8.5 months were forced to kill their babies by the injection of the saline solution. This is instant death for the infant. Just because there was a second child, this happened. Just because one more child was brought into the world. Sometimes babies are killed at hospitals mere minutes after being born. Maybe this could be overlooked if the law did what it was supposed to do, but according to research, this law only really applies to 39% of the Chinese population. Wealthy families disregard the rule and pay the fine to have more children, or just go to another country, give birth, and come back. And even though the law does apply to some less fortunate families, it hasn't made any difference in the population growth rate. They still have just as many children. They just don't care for some of them. The biggest decline in population growth rate in China was before this law was enforced. Yes, overpopulation is a big problem in China, but research from the OCPF showed that there are working, more humane options that the government didn't fully consider. Simulations have shown that an option such as just requiring families to spread out the birth of children would have elicited more compliance from the Chinese population as well as being more humane. This affects people everywhere. The world population is growing, and we need to stop this law from becoming enforced in any other countries with a growing population. This affects you, me, everyone. No, I am not an expert. I am not a researcher. I am not someone with first-hand experience. But I am someone who knows that this isn't right. I am someone who knows that this needs to stop. And I am someone who cares that in the time it took me to make this speech, 2 children were abandoned. 1 will die. And if we don't do something right now, this will continue. If we don't do something right now, more sons and daughters and sisters and brothers will be abandoned. So join me and stop this from happening anywhere else in the world. Join me and help end this in China once and for all.